influenced them in implementing foot and mouth disease control in Ethiopia?
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Wudu, and the title of my talk is Farmers' Intentions and Perceptions that Influence them in Implementing FMD Control in Ethiopia. So for the next 15 minutes, I will take out of laboratory and take you to the socio-economic aspect of the disease. This is the outline of my presentation, but I will start directly with the introduction. Let me give you a little bit background about livestock production in Ethiopia that will help to understand the later part of my presentation. Livestock in Ethiopia is an important economic activity which contributes to the livelihood of about 65% of the population. And it's also an important component of the national economy, which accounts up to 19% of GDP and about 20% of export earning for the country. Actually, Ethiopia has a large cattle population, which is estimated about 57 million heads of cattle, but most of these cattle are kept under subsistence systems, which are characterized by low input and low output. Generally, there are three main types of production systems in Ethiopia. The dominant production system is the crop livestock mixed system, and this contains about 85% of the cattle population in the country, and this is practiced in the central highland part of the country. And primarily, the objective of cattle in this type of production system is to provide draft power for crop cultivation, as you can see in this picture. The second type of production system is the pastoral system, which contains about 15% of the cattle population in the country. And this is practiced in the lowland peripheral part of the country. And cattle in this system are primarily used to produce subsistence milk for households. The third type of production system is the market-oriented system. Actually, this is a very small component of the total cattle population. This is practiced in urban and peri-urban parts of the country. And obviously, the purpose of cattle in this type of production system is to produce milk and meat for subsistence. And actually, this is largely dairy. The livestock production in Ethiopia is affected by livestock disease. And as most of you know, FMD is one of the important, economically important diseases worldwide. And this disease is endemic in Ethiopia. This is a map of Ethiopia showing the prevalence of, or the incidence of FMD outbreak. And as you can see, the disease is more prevalent on the central and eastern part of the country. Probably the central part of the country is where market-oriented systems are dominant, and this is a pastoral system. The disease causes a lot of production losses and also hampers export trade in the country. So to mitigate these impacts of the disease, the government, Ethiopian government, has a plan to launch an official control program against FMD. However, successful livestock disease control program requires the motivation of the farmers to fully participate in the control programs. And this motivation may be vary due to different reasons, one of which is different product systems. Information about the motivation of farmers to implement FMD control measures in the different product systems in Ethiopia is lacking, and therefore the objectives of this study were one, to explore farmers' intention to implement foot and mouth disease control in Ethiopia, and also to identify perceptions about the disease and its risks that could influence these intentions. Mind you, I'm talking about intentions, farmer intentions, not actions, because there is no widely practiced FMD control in Ethiopia. So we assess the intention of farmers to implement the different FMD control measures. Methodology for assessing which factors determine the farmer's intention to implement FMD control measure. We used a health belief model. This is actually a popular model in public health. According to this model, health behavior is determined by the personal beliefs or perceptions about the disease and its available control measures. In our case, what we speculate is farmers' intention to implement FMD control measure can be affected by the farmer's perception about FMD risk and about the effectiveness of available control measures. This model has 4 perception constructs that could affect behavior, in our case intention, and these perceptions include perception of susceptibility to the disease, perception of severity of the disease, perception of benefits of control, control measures against FMD, that means, and perception of barriers to implement the control measures. And actually there are also other components of the model like modifying factors which affect the perceptions themselves. Perceptions affect the intentions, and the perceptions are also affected by other modifying factors. Actually, this is a model schematically contextualized for FMD. On the right side, we have the intention to implement different FMD control measures. And here are the 4 perception constructs, which include perceived susceptibility that are measured by FMD outbreak frequency and trend in our case, perceived severity, which are measured by the impact of FMD on production, perceived benefits, which are measured by perception of effectiveness of proposed control measures, and perception of barriers that were measured by barriers to implement FMD controls. So according to this model, we expect the intention of the farmers will be affected by one or more of these perceptions. And these perceptions are again affected themselves by modifying variables, in our case, which are socio-demographic and husbandry factors. Actually, these are the variables that we use to measure the different components of the model, but I will come to this in the future slides, so I don't have to explain all these variables. These are variables or questions that we use to collect data for these different components of the model. Data analysis, we measured intentions and perceptions using percentages, and we analyze the effect of the different perception on intentions by using binary logic regression, because the intention was measured in binary scale, that is, there is intention or no intention, and the effect of modifying variables on perception were analyzed by using ordinal logic regression, because the perceptions were measured in ordinal scale as low, medium, and high. This is the result. This table shows the intention of farmers to implement FMD control measures. We considered 4 types of control measures, which includes vaccination at their own cost. This means vaccination by costing farmers, vaccination free of charge, if the vaccination is, for example, given by the government, herd isolation and animal movement restriction all the time. That means keeping herds isolated and regulating animal movement all the time, irrespective of the occurrence of FMD outbreak. And the other is herd isolation and animal movement restriction only during outbreak. So we assess the intention of farmers, whether they have intention to implement these different control measures. And these are the results in the different production systems. This is the crop livestock mixed system, pastoral system, and market-oriented system. When you see vaccination at their own cost, most of the farmers in the pastoral and market-oriented system have the intention to implement this measure, but only 42% of farmers in the crop livestock mixed system have the intention to do so. When vaccination is given free of charge, almost all farmers in all production systems are willing or have intention to apply the measure. When we come to the herd isolation and animal movement restriction measure all the time, only very few farmers in the CLM, 18% and 2% in the pastoral system, have the intention to implement this type of measure, while most farmers in the market-oriented system have the intention to apply this measure. When this measure is applied only during an outbreak, then there is a little improvement in the farmers in the crop livestock mixed system, which is about 50%, but still only 11% of pastoral farmers are willing to apply this measure. This is the model. This is how we analyzed the impact of or the effect of perceptions on vaccination on different control measures. The first one is vaccination at their own cost. So the intention to implement vaccination at their own cost was affected only by the perception of barriers. We didn't find an association between perception of susceptibility, perception of severity, and perception of benefit to that of intention of applying FMD at cost. The only perception that affected this intention was the perception of barrier, especially the cost of vaccination. That is, those farmers who perceive the cost of vaccination high have low intention to implement FMD control measure and vice versa. Again, the cost of vaccination itself is affected by other factors, like the age of farmers and production systems. And older farmers perceive the cost of vaccination high as compared to younger farmers. And with regard to the production systems, those farmers in the crop livestock mixed system perceive the cost of vaccination high as compared to farmers in the pastoral and market-oriented system. This is similar result for the other control measures, that is herd isolation and movement restriction during an outbreak. And in this case, the intention to apply this control measure is affected by three of the perception constructs, which includes perceived susceptibility, perceived benefits of control, and perceived barriers. If you see, for example, the perceived susceptibility, those farmers that think they are more susceptible have high intention to implement the FMD control measure as compared to those farmers who perceive their susceptibility as low. In case of perceived benefits, those farmers who perceive the effectiveness of FMD control measure is low, have low intention as compared to those farmers who perceive the effectiveness as high. And it's the same for barriers. And again, these three perception constructs are affected by production system. So that means perceptions are different for farmers in different production systems. To conclude, the result of this study shows that there is low intention in the crop livestock mixed farmers for vaccination with cost. And there is also low intention generally in subsistence farmers, that is the crop livestock mixed, and pastoral farmers to implement movement restriction control measure. Perception of barriers were the important determinants of intention in both control measures, both in vaccination and movement restriction. Perceptions were the most important, perception of barriers were the most important determinant. And perceptions are different in different product systems. That is, perception about the disease risk and about the control measures are different in different product systems. Therefore, these control promotion programs designed to increase farmers' participation in FMD control by using vaccination and animal movement restriction should give more attention to the perception of barriers and should take into account different in perceptions among the different production systems. Finally, I would like to acknowledge JEFRA for sponsoring me to come here and present my research, and also NAFIC, Netherlands organization for cooperation in international education, for supporting this research. And thank you.
Thank you, Rudu. That was a really nice presentation. It's great to see these sorts of studies being done, and more of them should happen. Are there any time for a couple of questions? Yeah. Microphone? Oh.
Yeah, we don't practice vaccination widely in Ethiopia. Vaccination conducted only in commercial farmers. So yeah, I was thinking mainly about the intention of farmers because we cannot measure the behavior of farmers or the action of farmers in terms of vaccination or movement control because there is no widely practiced control measure in Ethiopia. So we can't talk about vaccination coverage actually. Yeah.
Okay, another question here.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Some of those perceived barriers by the different type of producers are real barriers because they are intrinsic to their production system. What kind of implications would that have in constructing a control program given the array of different production systems in Ethiopia?
Yeah, we have seen farmers in different production systems have different motivation. So if you like to implement a successful program, that means we may give different incentives for farmers in different product systems. For example, in this case, farmers in the crop livestock mixed system do not have intention to implement vaccination at their own cost, but those farmers in the market-oriented and in the pastoral system, they are willing to pay for the vaccination. So if you implement a national program, maybe we need to give some incentive for farmers in the crop livestock mixed system. So it has this type of implication.
Okay. Any other questions? Just one last one here.
Thank you. That was a lovely paper. It's such a long time since I've done any willingness to pay studies, 15 or 20 years ago. But how do you set the price in your questions and in terms of the price of vaccine? And how do you deal with whether they are really likely to buy or not when they say yes, they would pay?
Yeah, we use the price of vaccine in Ethiopia. This includes the cost of the vaccine and also the cost of application. So we used at market price. We use the vaccine at market price.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so now we switch to